But the reason I started it is because I felt like I had something to say. It's the same reason any of us write. We have something to say. We either have stories to tell, we have worlds to build, or we have something to say and we want other people to hear it, whether they agree with it or not.
All right, let's dive into our interview with Jeff Putnam. Jeff has joined the Nonsense Free Editor team as one of our ghostwriters and editors, but like everyone else on the team, his career goes back much farther than that. And so part of what I wanted to do with this video series is for everyone to get to know our editors and writers and see who is going to be working on their books and maybe also learn something about building a career out of writing. Thank you for joining me today, Jeff.
Appreciate you having me.
So the first question I want to ask is, and I've done some studying on you from looking at your other podcasts that you've done with Zuby, among other people, is writing is all I've ever done, but you took a very different route. So tell me about your career path and when you first ended up on writing as your actual career.
Well, I always wanted to be a writer ever since I was a kid, mainly because I like reading books. I think I had every single Hardy Boys, Goosebumps, the abridged versions of all like the Jules Verne classics, But what really what really made me want to write was I saw a photograph on the internet while I was doing a school project, and it was Ernest Hemingway on a sailboat with a typewriter and a machine gun, and he was shark hunting. And I thought to myself, if that's what a writer does, then I definitely need that in my life. Now, I've been writing for a while now. I still haven't gone shark hunting with machine guns. There's still time. Mm-hmm. Pretty much all my life, all I ever done was blue collar work outside of the military. Okay. But, I've done everything from construction to working on cattle ranches. Yes, I know how to rope and ride and tie and all that other. Did one very foolish bout of rodeo that we will not discuss. I've still got the marks, but just blue collar guy. And then 2018 came around and I was working at a manufacturing job in the automotive industry. And I decided I really don't want to be here for another 30 years because this job sucks. Mm-hmm. So I figured I'd start my own company. About that time, I had a beard down to my chest, had long, shaggy hair. And the thing for me was I could never find beard products that didn't make me smell like a 14-year-old boy trying to impress his prom date. So I figured I would make my own, and that I'd been doing that for a little while. I just Googled recipes and stuff using random essential oils for scents. But then someone said, "Hey, what is that?" A guy at work, he's like, "Where'd you buy it?" "Oh, I made it." He goes, "Dude, I will buy some from you." And so my first company was born. It's a Rugged Legacy grooming supply company. And I had that for about 3 years, from March 2019 when I launched it. So yeah, I launched it after 3 months of prep, having zero business experience. And it did really well. Owned it for 3 years, sold it last September. No, 4 years. Yeah. Math's not my strong suit. This is why I'm a writer and not an engineer.
They're still used by figures.
Yeah, have to. So 4 years, sold it. And then about 2020, I was still working at the manufacturing plant because the company wasn't making me all of the money that it could have been at that point. It's only been, live for a year. I got fired because I refused to wear a mask and not use a fan in a manufacturing plant in the middle of South Carolina summer when it was 110 degrees inside. So I just had to go all in on that company. And I didn't have enough money for marketing, so I had to learn marketing. And I didn't have enough money to pay someone to do ads or copywriting, so I had to learn that. And then I still figured the easiest way to get traffic to my site was blogs. And that was my first foray into writing. I had a blog right there on the site, and I just talked about stuff that, the average guy with a beard would like to read about, outlaw culture. Why are we as men attracted to the bad guy, like the outlaw? Josie Wales was the guy we all want to be, right? We fantasize about being Jesse James or Billy the Kid. It was stuff like that. And that's when I got my real taste for actually writing to help me make money.
That's fantastic. So you've been on a lot of like big podcasts. You kind of, even though you're not, you never were a manosphere creator, you kind of came to the attention of a lot of, manosphere creators. You got on some very, large profile podcasts. Did you just do networking through social media, or did you actively pursue those appearances? Like, did you kind of do your own PR in addition to your own copywriting?
I had no idea what I was doing. I was just writing tweets. And whenever I would see, because I have no shame, right? So whenever I would see an account that I followed for a while, hey, you don't know me. You've never heard of me. I've got like 300 followers, but I wrote something you might like. So I'm going to go ahead and send it to you without your permission. And if you like it, cool, just tell me. And I did that for dozens of people. And then you know how it works. People, well, this guy knows that guy. Hey, this guy, Jeff, writes cool stuff. He has also got some cool products I checked out, and they weren't terrible and they didn't give me a rash. So I guess he's an okay guy. And it just kind of expanded from that.
Now you have some books under your own name. Tell me how those came about.
I think it was December 2020. I mean, it was just kind of for kicks. I said, I'm going to have a book that I wrote before the end of 2021. Well, I sat down in January and figured, all right, I've got a whole year and I'll write this book. And I get up at 4 a.m. I'd go to the gym, come back from the gym, get my coffee, sit right there on my front porch with my laptop. And I set a goal. I'm going to write until I reach at least 1,000 words. If I get more, cool. If I don't get to 1,000, I don't stop until I do. So 35 days later, I had a 40,000 word book and didn't edit it other than, Google Docs spell check. Said, that works. Paid a buddy a couple of $100 to format it and design a cover. Uploaded it to Amazon KDP, to my surprise. Number 1 on Amazon within 24 hours.
Nice. And what category was that in?
It was in, like you mentioned, the masculinity, mano kind of thing. But it was a very unfiltered approach. I talked about the impotency of the Republicans as well as the Democrats and why most men just want to be left alone. Because the first book was called Empire Divided. And it's the modern man's path back to his tribe. I'd been part of a secular fraternity at that point for, about 2 or 3 years. And brotherhood was what I was missing in my life. I missed it ever since I got out of the military. And it made a big difference. But how do you find your tribe? And that's what that book was about. And then my second book was a sequel to that. And I did that one. I started it in June. No, I started it in May of that same year, finished it in June, launched it. Same thing happened. And I haven't written anything else under my own name since then because I've been too busy writing for other people.
Yes. I've been keeping you often. I've been getting that complaint from the other staff members too. It's like, wow, my book has been sitting around, but everybody else is getting published. So I'm a terrible example. So 2020 kind of changed a lot of things for you. You had to quit your steady job, I presume, with benefits. You had to make it all on your own. So in terms of what you wanted for your career, not just the progression, because we kind of heard a little bit about that, but for what you wanted for yourself, how did that sudden and unexpected and probably unwelcome change kind of change what you wanted for your life?
Like I said, prior to 2018, I just wanted a regular job that I could keep for 40 years and retire. I don't want to be, some spectacular businessman or whatever. And I still don't, But when 2020 came around and I got by that point, I was 6 years into that job, really fed up with working for people that were significantly dumber than I am, and I'm not even that smart. It got frustrating. And so when I started my own company, my only goal has been just to never work for someone else again. And I know I work for you, but there's still a level of freedom that I have. I choose the projects I take. I can say, hey, I'm not doing nothing for the next month. And you go, all right, I'll get back to it. But okay, cool.
Right.
And that's it. I don't have a specific time, a specific schedule other than what I set for myself. And I get to do it from right here at my desk and go hang out with my wife and kids after.
Exactly. And make us all jealous by it's like, oh, it's 3 o'clock on a weekday. Look at me at the pool because that's how I spend my weekdays. It's like, okay.
Yeah. 10 a.m. with a cigar, a margarita, and I'm in my pool.
Definitely. And this brings me to my next question. So you've had your hands in a lot of pots. So we've talked about your writing, copywriting, coaching. You had your own coaching cohort. And that's usually what the gurus tell you to do. It's like, all right, you need to be a coach. You need to have a cohort. You need to get, monthly recurring revenue. When you had that successfully, why writing of all things?
My heart was not really in the coaching thing. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't know, did it halfway with any of the clients that I had. And I've still got some clients today that have been with me for years, simply because I'm not going to kick them out and say, you're on your own, not just because they still pay me, but I enjoy helping people. But I did not like the client acquisition aspect of it, to the point, because I was freelance writing for 3 or 4 years straight. And it's great, but you cannot turn anything off. You have to always be on searching for the next prospect or making people come to you. And that just got annoying, but I quit simply because I got tired of looking for more clients. Even though I could find them easily, I just didn't like doing it.
Right. The living the sales funnel lifestyle, just kind of not for you.
Yeah. I mean, it was for a couple of years, but you get burnt out on it quick when you're so immersed in it.
So in living right with your spirit, that kind of brings us to the big headliner. So you are now the most Catholic person I know, including my boomer Catholic dad. And that's really something. And I had a discovery yesterday. I was interviewing our next staff member. We are everyone at the Nonsense Free Editor was at least raised Catholic. Not all of us are practicing, but we're all raised Catholic. It's a very specific thing. Like even when you fall away from the church, somehow we all still cluster together. You are now the most Catholic person I know, but you're a convert and a fairly new one. So how did that affect your life, your family, and your writing career?
Well, I don't think it affected my writing career so much, other than I have something else to write about. But the conversion came about when I was working on a book for a good friend of mine, and it was about biblical masculinity. What does it mean to actually be a good Christian man? Because wearing, skinny jeans and running around on a stage with a light show as a Protestant pastor ain't it. It's just, that weirds me out a little bit, and there's this conflation of meekness and weakness. Christianity's kind of got a little soft. Working on that book was an 18-month project because I didn't write it. I kind of co-wrote parts of it, and we were worked together, he and I, twice a week, 5 a.m. to like 7 a.m. before he had to go to work, writing and co-writing and kind of live editing as we go, discussing it. And it led to a lot of theological discussions. About 13, 14 months into it, it was kind of like this calling, this feeling that I had where, I had been a practicing pagan for years. And I hadn't prayed in years. So I didn't really even know how I was doing that. I just had the urge to pray. And so I did. And it became like this thread that got pulled. And the more it pulled, the deeper I went into, okay, do I believe? I think I do believe. And that led me to a buddy of mine, Adam Lane Smith, who is probably the most intelligent person I know that's well versed in attachment theory. He's godfather of my children now, actually. And we've been friends for a few years. And I said, hey, man, I'm thinking about going to Catholic church because my wife was raised Catholic. And so, and the Protestants weird me out because I grew up Southern Baptist. Mm-hmm. And he goes, okay, just go and see what happens. I went to one mass and haven't stopped going since.
Mm-hmm. It is a very different thing because, my marriage is interfaith. My husband was raised AME, with very musical, we'll say, very excited. And we don't really vibe with the others. I mean, obviously we make compromises, but it's just like that level of energy for me just seems very secular. Like it feels like a concert. Whereas the Catholic Mass, because it's so structured, it's just kind of has that tone of solemnity. And I think it depends on what makes you feel closer to the divine, like the very different worshiping styles, which is probably why there are so many branches of Christianity.
Yeah, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I've gone to some of those mega church type things and I'm like, you have to get me out of here.
Yeah, it's not my vibe either. There's a lot of times where the message, the theology, I'll be like, okay, I can dig it, but what you wearing, sir? Yeah,
and you're passing out bagels and you got coffee in the lobby and there's a fog machine guy coming down on a wire rushing to the stage doing a guitar solo. Mm-hmm. I just can't do it.
Yeah. It's like, I'll just go to the Taylor Swift concert. It's fine. It's better.
Well, then of course there's the whole thing about Catholicism being true and all. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, that pesky, that thing.
That one minor detail about it.
Mm-hmm. And I think I don't want to say numbers or anything, but from the Twitter traffic I see, you have a Substack and I have a Substack too, but yours, it seems to be on the more persuasive side. So yours is called The Catholic Convert. And it's not just about your personal journey, but it's about defending the catechism and why Catholicism is true. There's so many offshoots of Christianity, why the original is the true. And I've seen some traffic saying, hey man, you kind of brought me back around. So your persuasive skills are on point, shall we say. What led you to start the blog in general? What drew you to Substack specifically? And what is your mission with that blog?
I think Substack was the choice for me simply because I Googled it and it was the first thing that came up.
SEO.
Awesome.
For the win.
Right. SEO for the win. But the reason I started it is because I felt like I had something to say. It's the same reason any of us write. We have something to say. We either have stories to tell, we have worlds to build, or we have something to say and we want other people to hear it, whether they agree with it or not. And so that's the reason I did. I had bored my wife to death with my 3.5 hour long dissertations at the dinner table, defending the Catholic faith she was a part of. No one's really interested in that unless you're me or kind of like me. And especially not if you're just like, I asked how your day was, honey.
You should have named your blog The Catholic Autist. That would have been very
The Catholic Autist. It probably would have. But as far as that, as long as people read it, I'll write it. I don't do it for me. I write it because I want to. I mean, there's a paid option, but people can opt in for free. And as long as you read the article within the first 14 days of me publishing it, it's still free. There's just a paywall if you want to read the old archives. Mm-hmm. Or if you just want to tip me $5 a month for my work. Mm-hmm. And I don't care if you do or don't.
Right. Yeah.
I just write because I got something to say.
Mm-hmm. It's like the tipping model I've found it's better. It's more welcoming. It brings more people in and they can hear what you have to say. And it's not, the barrier of the paywall. All right. So in addition to the Substack, what kind of writing do you have planned under your own name, your own stuff, not other people's?
Well, I'm about halfway through book 1 of what I'm hoping to be a 20-part series or more. That's in the mystery, spy, espionage, thriller genre. Mainly because I've always been a fan of Vince Flynn and his Mitch Rapp series. It's incredible. Lee Child and the Jack Reacher series is a fun read, but it's not quite what I would want to write. Mine is more like Vince Flynn and Tom Clancy had a baby. Because I enjoy both of those works. I also have a fun fiction series planned with you.
Yes, eventually.
Yeah, eventually. We'll get to it. I promise. I've been doing background work on it. But, I mean, you've got a Catholic priest who is a detective driving around, or a former Catholic priest. Maybe he's been defrocked. We don't know yet. But he's driving around with the skull of St. Thomas Aquinas, and they're solving mysteries together.
Which was immediately, it's like, what? That picture that you had, where did you get that image? Because that was the one that made you kind of sit up and go, oh, I have to write that. What is that image?
That's an actual priest driving around with the skull of St. Thomas Aquinas in his car.
Because I was like, is that AI? Well, it's like,
no, that's the cool thing about Catholicism, right? Like right now, there's a guy named Father Martin's driving around the U.S. and he's got St. Jude's arm in his front seat.
Just chilling. Yep.
Just chilling, taking it on like a parish tour. But I saw that and I went, this would make a very punchy, crunchy, slightly hilarious, but still entertaining Christian buddy cop kind of vibe series. But not cheesy, right?
No. And just very original, we'll say, because a lot of it is derivative. It's like, oh, a priest and an unsolved crimes. Okay, it's like, well, yeah, but now it's a priest and the skull of a saint, which is slightly different.
The skull of a saint, then only he can hear it talking to him.
And still very much aligns with the Catechism. So it's just like, it works. It just works.
it aligns with the Catechism, and it's kind of got that Arnold Schwarzenegger End of Days kind of vibe to it.
Classic. My favorite is actually Stigmata, even though that, we'll just say, does not align with the Catechism, but still vibes.
Well, no, and you've also got, what was that? See No Evil with Edgar Ramirez and Eric Bana, where Edgar Ramirez played that Jesuit priest, and I can't remember the actor's name, but he played the bad guy villain in the latest Mission Impossible series. He was like a possessed inmate or something like that.
I haven't seen that one.
Or it's like a serial killer. It's pretty good. Eric Bana is awesome. Edgar Ramirez is awesome. He's the guy I've got my man crush on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, my husband likes Glenn Powell. That's his man crush. I'm like, really? Of all people? Yeah, when you said See No Evil, of course, I thought of the ridiculous horror movie starring the wrestler Kane, who is now somebody's governor. I think he's a politician, so that's.
I think he's like a mayor or a congressman or a governor.
He's like a mayor or
something like that.
Glenn Jacobs. I'm like, Kane is now a politician. Okay, it works. It's fine. So with that in mind, that's what you like to write for yourself. What books do you most like to write with as you work with a nonsense-free editor?
I really like nonfiction because, like the memoir, this is my rags to riches story, because I've got a little bit of one of those of my own. I'm not rich, but I'm not in rags either. So I've got my own come up story, and I know what it's like to build something from scratch and then people be interested in how it came about. And so when those kind of books come in, I relate to them pretty well. Not a lot of people know this, but I was cast to have a recurring role in Longmire as a sheriff's deputy. But the only reason it didn't happen is because even though it took place in Wyoming, they filmed in New Mexico. And I was living in New Mexico when I had auditioned for the part, because why not? And I moved back home to South Carolina, 2,200 miles away, only to get the call 3 weeks after I relocated here, by the way, you got the part. After everything I've just done, I'm not going all the way back,
Well, that's
2,000
what was the
miles.
pay? That's the question. What would they have paid you?
It was going to be like 700 something a day. Not bad, but not enough to me to tell my family. So how I spent all that money on getting us moved out here and all that other, well, it was for nothing. We're going right back. Or you guys stay here and I go back to New Mexico.
Right.
So it just didn't happen. But I did, theater club and all this other stuff as a kid. And that's what I found ghostwriting really pays off. Well, it pays off in ghostwriting because it's like being an actor. People always joke that Matthew McConaughey or Tom Cruise, they always play the same guy. Yes, but when you're acting, you don't go, how do I pretend to be someone pretending to be someone? So if I was going to play James Bond or a secret agent, then me, Jeff, how would I behave if that was my job? And so I do the same thing with the nonfiction ghostwriting projects that I get. If I was in this man's shoes, of course you have to get their backstory, and you do that because that's going into the book. I just try to pretend I'm basically playing that person, writing the script for their life story, and kind of get into their shoes and write it.
I think I heard Nabil Aziz say something in one of the courses that he gave. He was talking about how copywriters, a lot of times they'll get pushback from their clients and they'll say, well, this isn't my voice. And of course he's like me, he's filthy vulgarian. And he was like, fuck your voice. Your voice sucks. You're boring. And so it's the copywriter saying, okay, well, how would I write this content, if you weren't a boring CEO and instead you were someone worth listening to? And being a ghoster, and this is no offense to my lovely clients, you're all very interesting and wonderful. But sometimes the content does need a little zhuzh, and that is why they come to us. It's like, well, how can I make another medical illness or
your writing isn't as good as mine is what I usually say to clients.
Right.
Otherwise, you wouldn't be looking for a writer. I'm going to say it the way you should say it. It's still you, but I'm saying it the way you should say it.
Right.
But that's what I like most in the nonfiction realm. Obviously true crime's always fun. Could be a little disturbing when you got to because I go to great lengths when I do true crime books. I file FOIA requests with district attorneys, and I drive across the country and pick up records and all this other. So even though I don't get reimbursed for any of that.
Yes. I was like, you did what? You don't have to do that. And you were like, no, it's fun. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, we can talk about that later. But in the fiction range, believe it or not, the hallmarky kind of romance chick books are fun to write. Fantasy books are fun to write. Obviously, thriller mystery books are fun to write because I like to play with the plot lines and add twists and turns, kind of the same way you would get out of a James Patterson meets Dan Brown kind of thing. But those are pretty much what I really love working with the most.
Awesome. And if a client decides to work with you, they'd say, I want Jeff. Like what can they expect from what you deliver and just the experience of working with you?
Well, it's the same thing when I look at my books and why I'm so critical of my own, even the works that I haven't published yet. Every single book is unique, just like every single person is unique. It has its own voice. It has its own personality. Even if it's one of a series, it's still unique. It's just a sibling, right? They might have some same genetic traits, but I've got 9 kids and none of them act the same. They don't even smell the same. I want that for your book. I want your book to have its own personality and stand out, even if it's one of 100 in a series. It needs to be memorable. It needs to be the kind of book that when someone puts down, they go, damn, I can't wait for the next one. Or, holy shit, what else does this guy have? And that's what I do with every project I work on. I don't I don't play when it comes to books because it's the stories that we tell. It's the stories we tell each other. And it's the stories we tell ourselves that make us who we are as people. And we're in the storytelling business. It's not, and it is a business. It's not a joke. It's not a hobby. It's a passion. Most people don't write because they just don't feel called to it. And the people who do write drink for that very specific reason.
So you have 9 kids. That's a big question with aspiring writers. A lot. And I've been hired where they're like, I had this book. I started working on it. I'm a mom now. I don't have any time. How does a father of 9, most of them are still in the house. How many of us are still in the house?
5 are still in the house, but 2 of those 5 are 18 and 19.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's normal days. Yeah.
That's that. I don't want them leaving until they can afford a place. Mm-hmm. So you stay here, you work, you do your thing, and save up your money. And then you're not cast out into the world at 18 with nothing to do, but, well, I guess I'll, live in this crack house and try to save money.
One thing I love about social media shaming is, if you could not toss your children out the second they turn 18 like they're trash, that would be, let's shame collectively people who do that. That would be fantastic. It's like, that's my favorite shaming tactic that we have now.
It's like my daughter, I've only got 1 girl out of 9 kids.
Mm-hmm.
She's staying here either until she decides A, enter into the religious life, become a nun, or B, gets married.
That's not a weird thing because honestly, people are like, oh, well, don't you?
It is the most Catholic perspective you can have.
It is. And I think it's internationally, it's normal because it's like a woman living by herself,
She's a spinster.
Yeah, exactly. Even if she's very young. So for me, I joined the military right after high school. I was 17 years old when I joined, but I was living in a barracks full of women. I was never alone. There was never a second where I was alone. I was with my barracks mates, and then we got in the fleet and I had a roommate, and you were never by yourself. So even though, it's not exactly a religious lifestyle, we'll say, I was never by myself and I was never cast out among the wolves. I had company. So my parents were okay. Well, mostly okay with it.
Yeah, it was like that for me too. I joined the Army at 17. Mm-hmm. You know what? Yeah, the infantry sounds like a good idea. And
so do I.
It was
an option for me.
It was a idea.
Yeah.
I don't regret any of it. But
same way. I'm glad I joined.
have 0 real world transferable skills.
All right. So how do you see your career as a writer and a ghostwriter in the next 10 years? What can we expect from this latest phase of your life?
Well, hopefully within the next 10, I'll have at least 5 New York Times bestselling novels back to back to back. No, look, I like having something to say, but I'm much more critical of my own work than I am other people's work, because it's that actor thing that I had where I can become someone else and write it in their voice and say the things that they have to say in the way it should be said. Mm-hmm. But when I look at mine, I'm like, Jeff, you suck. You should not ever write anything for yourself again. It's weird. I'm very hypercritical of myself. And don't get me wrong. I call out other bad writers all the time. No, you suck. This is why you need to hire me. Sometimes in nicer words. Mm-hmm. But no, I love writing for other people. So I don't think I'll stop doing that in a while, because I know what it's like to have something to say, but not have an outlet to do so. Or the confidence. Like, I still struggle with myself in my own works, even though other people can read it and be like, oh no, this is great. I'm like, well, you've got poor taste.
Clearly you're an idiot if you think that what I produce is good,
Right. I've got #1 bestsellers all over the internet, but clearly people who like them are terrible judges of literature. Mm-hmm. But no, I don't think I'll stop writing for other people for quite a while. Mm-hmm. And I'll still squeeze in those passion projects that, do I want to be the next Lee Child, Vince Flynn, James Patterson, Tom Clancy? No, I don't. But if I can write some books that people enjoy to read, whether under my own name or someone else's, I can do that for the rest of my life.
Do you
It's
think
this
you'll ever try a
wonderful
trad
place
pub?
where I'm like, trad pub, that's what I want to do with my novel, the one that you reviewed a part of. Hire a book agent, the whole thing. Because yeah, sure, why not? Worst they can say is no, and then I self-publish and go draft a digital, that way. I could still get on Barnes and Noble shelves that way.
Exactly right.
Doesn't matter. But it's this wonderful place where I love what I do. I dream about writing, which is probably weird. Most people are now going to think I'm a lunatic. I dream about writing. I find peace in what I do, even if I'm, pacing around the room, stepping out for 15 smoke breaks with a bottle of scotch in my hand. I love everything that being a writer entails. I get to speak and cause involuntary hallucinations in readers when they get sucked into a story and they're pulled into that world. And if that offers them a little bit of escape from their life, where maybe things are going great, maybe things are going bad, maybe things are just boring, but it pulls them out of the world and into a new one, and they can enjoy it while they're there, I'll never stop writing for myself because of that. And if someone else can pick up their book with their name on it, even though it was ghostwritten, and say, my story is finally told, and it drives people to my business, or it drives people to my cause, or it drives people to do a thing, be better, because it's got pieces of me in it. I just couldn't say it the best way that someone else could. But now this stack of paper in my hand can change people's lives. I don't think I'll ever stop writing for other people.
I think that is a fantastic way to end, and a perfect encapsulation of why ghostwriting exists in the first place. I love everything about that. Thank you so much.
Hey, broken clock is right 2 times at least, right?
No broken clocks here.